It means a lot to me because I know in the past that women were not always respected, and it's very important that everyone knows that they should be treated equally and we should be respected.
So Women's History Month to me means women being able to share their stories and their opinions on things while being treated respectfully, and being able to have a voice to really speak on what they believe is right and like equal compared to others.
Women's History Month is just a way to highlight the acts and accomplishments and, in some ways, afflictions of what women experience on a routine basis. And talking about ways to be an advocate, talking about ways to be supportive, and just lifting and uplifting the works of the community and the female representing or female identity. Because not every person who identifies as a woman may be identifying that way physically to them. Like just because they could be non-binary, they could be trans, but there's still an importance to understanding that gender equity is important.
I'm going to start with the 19th century because there are two big movements for women's rights. The first one's largely in the 19th century and started even while there was still slavery. So, what you find is that as women start pushing for women's rights, they're also pushing for an end to slavery. So, you have overlap there, and that a lot of women were involved in both movements. And that's also where you see the first African American women getting involved is they're abolitionists, and then they get involved in the women's rights movement. So you tend to have a group of reformers and activists who are involved in both. And in part because the abolitionist movement at first was very reluctant to have women involved. The women are, sort of demanding their right to be involved, their right to speak on politics, their right to speak in public, because in the 19th century, women weren't supposed to speak in public. And so you see this generation of reformers coming up even before the Civil War, but even more so after the Civil War. You start to have a big push towards reform in general that women are involved in. And so that would include the women's suffrage movement, but it would also include, the labor movement, and would include larger issues of rights like um, the right to own property or other things that married women did not have the right to do. As far as the civil rights movement goes, that's sort of the second big wave. So the first big wave kind of ends with the women's suffrage movement, and women get the right to vote in 1920. But because in the South, African American men have been disenfranchised by, Jim Crow policies and on the Mississippi Plan, those kinds of things. African American women are also pushing for the right to vote, but the stakes are completely different because the African American community has pretty much been disenfranchised altogether in the South by the 1890s. Okay, so if you fast forward that to, say, the 1960s, again, you have kind of a couple things going on. You have the feminist movement, a new feminist movement, which generally gets called second wave feminism, which starts in the early 1960s. And then you have the civil rights movement, which in the South is very much about not only ending Jim Crow, but also getting around these voter policies that have managed to disenfranchise both African American men and African American women since the 1890s.
And all the officers are passionate about what they do here, and they definitely care for the students. So no matter what your identity is, please feel free and comfortable to come here.